I think the story is vital, and I think that's my place in the circular story as a whole, is to tell creative stories and through that convince people that circularity is interesting and exciting. I think for me, circularity makes sense. It's always been about common sense for me and about necessity. And you know, originally that necessity was because I was from a working class place and didn't have the money to go and buy fabrics. And now it's from a place of understanding that the fashion system is broken and that the world as a whole needs a new way of working. It was clear as a young person that I had to kind of do things my own way to make things happen. And it also became clear working in the fashion industry that there was many flaws that didn't really make any sense, both from a waste perspective, but also just from a design perspective as well. It didn't seem like a clever idea to be making stuff if it was all going to be going to landfill or incineration. The first thing I ever made when I was 13 was a school bag out of a pair of jeans. People didn't believe that this thing I was carrying around had been made out of something which they were wearing, and so I found that very interesting and engaging, and I thought this is something I'd like to do more of. I decided that fashion was a viable career option and Googled the best place to study it, and the result was Central St Martin's Women's Wear, and so from then on I tried everything possible to get in here. I think when I was here there was people that were doing it in a really serious way, but perhaps their aesthetic was more eco-looking or just more kind of kooky. Whereas I was always keen to do something that looked very like luxury and high fashion, but that had all of those kind of sustainable ethos attached to them as well. So here we are at Rombez, amazing building on the South Bank in London, and we're in the Linden studio. Today's incredibly exciting because it's the first rehearsal that the dancers are doing for the show, and I'm going to meet them and introduce the collection to them. We started with Burberry, using like old Burberry material, so it was very much like from the very beginning it was always about like what do you want to make, and then what have you got, and then what can you make from that. But because you kind of go through, it's almost like if you like imagine if you like planned a dance once or planned it twice, you're like second time you think of things more that are more interesting, and that's kind of what happens because we design it and plan what we want and then look at what we've got and kind of design it again, and it usually makes it better. And we were talking about this morning with the guys filming, just that even in the last 5 years, which is how long I've been doing the brand for, is that like people's opinions and like openness to it has changed so much, and the industry is a lot more like behind it, and everyone's like the conscious like narrative was more unconscious, and now it's very like people all kind of know it's like something we need to do more. So it's getting easier, which is nice. For me, it's always been really important that sustainability and circularity are just built into the business model at every point. A really important part of that is that we make what we know people want to buy. The fashion industry has a massive waste issue because we guess what people want and make it before we sell it. And we hope to change that here and really reduce that waste of mass production. In many ways, circularity has made a lot of decisions for me that has enabled me and my brand to progress maybe quicker than it would have without it, because those decisions were made for me by what was available. We offer redesign, repair and restoration on our pieces. So if you've had it for a certain amount of time and you decide you'd like to reinvent it for yourself or a relative or a friend, we can do that for you. We can also fix it. We can also recommend where to have it cleaned. We think it's really important to stay in touch with the people and with the pieces and try to keep that connection throughout their lifetime so we can continue to offer the right service for them at the right time. For this collection, we've worked with Romba, the dance company, and we started with their 100-year-old archive. And we were really inspired by so many of the pieces that we found there. We decided it would be a great decision to base this collection on them and to work with the archive, the dancers, and also their outreach program called Future Movements to create a holistic, sustainable and circular project. When we were in the archive, some of the pieces that I really liked were from this piece called A Tragedy of Fashion, which was the first piece Romba ever performed in 1926. And obviously that's like the irony of that title with me being a fashion designer it then became quite a focal point. And the story of that piece is about, I don't know if you guys know this, but the story was about a dressmaker who's really upset by a bad dress he designed, so he kills himself with his shears. For me, I think the story is vital, and I think that's my place in the circular story as a whole, is to tell creative stories and through that convince people that circularity is interesting and exciting. It became apparent, especially through my graduate collection, that the power of the story attached to it could really help the work go a lot further. And I think especially when you're working with like repurposed materials or upcycled Swarovski crystals, as I was then, the story behind those materials is so much richer, and so when you add it to an amazing like personal concept, it just really helps the whole thing to kind of take off. You can list off facts and figures for days, but it's ultimately the story that someone tells that you remember and that you kind of take and put into your own life. And so I think that it's my role as a designer to tell those stories through my collections, but also a wider responsibility for the circular narrative, that we keep doing it in a really compelling and interesting way that encourages people to become circular too. So you can see like the ballet, there's a blazer with the ballet print, and then the puffy skirt, and that material that's over it is Romba costume fabric. And then the padding underneath is this new material that's been made by a mycelium company, which is made completely from mushrooms. Yeah, so it's like 100%, like you could even eat it, which I think is so exciting. We are a luxury brand, and so our prices reflect that, but that doesn't mean that sustainability and circularity can't happen at all points of the industry. I think that they're tools that can be used at all levels of fashion, and it just happens that I'm doing it in a luxury space, but it's completely possible to do it on the high street and in kind of the mid-range of fashion as well. I think the fashion industry is based on creativity, and creativity always solves things, and that's the hope really here for fashion, is that we can use our incredible creativity to not only make amazing clothes but also fix the systems that are broken. On the whole, now the industry kind of supports what I'm doing, but they find it hard to place me because the whole system is set up to support something different. So I think they know what I'm doing is great, but they're not sure how it fits in yet. But I think yet is the crucial word there.